Hey guys, can you hear me? Let me know over here in the comments in the chat if you can hear me. I'm so excited to be back on the live stream Q&A train. Oh my gosh. Third trimester is a trip, you guys. I am so tired. It is ridiculous. Like 8 p.m. feels like midnight. I don't know how I'm like struggling right now to even keep my eyes open, but I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, I had a doctor's appointment today. Baby's looking real good. It's so exciting. And he's moving all the time. Like he'll be moving probably throughout this while I'm just sitting here chatting with you guys. But it's so much fun. And Jacob had his hand on my belly tonight and he was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Because you can really feel his feet and his knees and his elbows. He is just, he's growing. He's getting big and strong, which is everything you want to hear as a mama. You're like, yes, this is perfect. That means he's going to be healthy. Please God, with God's help. So yeah, everything is good. Hi, everybody. Good to see you guys in the chat here. So we've got a lot of questions today. You guys submitted some great questions. So if you don't already know, I have a Substack newsletter. And if you subscribe to my Substack newsletter, if you become a premium subscriber, you will get access to all of my exclusive content, which includes my book club, which happens once a month. We are currently reading Catch 22, which is interesting. It is really interesting, but it is not the easiest read. And I think it's going to be a really good one for discussion. We also, we do a Zoom call. So we actually all chat in person in a sense. And I get to meet you guys personally, which is awesome. And then we also do these live stream Q&As where you can submit your questions and I will answer them. I won't be answering many questions from the chat. I don't really do that. I answer the questions specifically from my premium subscribers on Substack. So if you want to be a premium subscriber so you can submit questions for videos like this, make sure to head over now at classicallyabby.substack.com. And the other two things you get are my exclusive weekly articles, which are, the only place that I really write anymore, but I write a weekly article, and my podcast, which is called The Classic Girls, in parentheses, Guide. And I talk about a lot of different topics on there, like the expert on relationships, dating, faith, upcoming motherhood, and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. The community is fantastic. We're all really starting to get to know each other. I recognize a lot of you guys in the comments here because you guys have been so active over at my Substack. So it's really a lot of fun. So if you're interested in subscribing, do so. And yeah, so one of the really cool perks of being a subscriber is that you get to submit questions, which I've printed out so that I can be as organized about this as possible. So I think we should get into the questions, but I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's week is going well. Let me know in the comments here how your week is going. I would love to hear because our week is going well. It's been busy, but we're just chugging on through because we're getting close to the baby being born. So we want to make sure that things are ready and organized, but also kind of, I would say that that's kind of the hard balance is like constantly looking towards the future and then also trying to deal with your day-to-day, especially because tax season is coming up. Terrible. No one likes that. And I had to re-register our car and all that fun stuff, which is not fun at all, to be completely honest, but you do it and it's part of adulthood. So, someone was asking when my due date is. It's at the end of March. And yeah, so let's start getting into, and someone was asking how to become a premium subscriber. So I should have explained. You just head over to classicallyabby.substack.com and it's $7 a month or it's $70 for the whole year, which means you get 2 months for free. $7 a month. I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, if I get like a fancy drink from Starbucks, that's the same. So just one fancy drink from Starbucks less a month is the cost of your subscription. It's actually not very much at all. So let's get started. Such a long week. Can't wait for Shabbos. I feel you, man. I feel you. Okay, so number one is the first question we're going to do. What is your favorite period piece movie? So I actually wrote down a few. The first one that popped into my head is Pride and Prejudice. Just immediately popped in my head. I love Pride and Prejudice. I love that movie. I love that book. It's great. And I really love the way that the actors take on the roles. I love the way the whole thing is directed. The music is beautiful. And Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth's relationship is so lovely. And I think people have talked about this quite a bit, talking about the scene where Darcy helps Elizabeth into her carriage, and they touch hands for the first time. And as he walks away, he like just flexes his hand like, oh my gosh. And that's something I love and I totally relate to on my channel. It's something we might even be getting into a little bit today here, or I've definitely talked about on my channel before, is just the beauty of keeping touch sacred and holy and like sexual, so that when you barely touch hands, it's already so electrifying. Like that's a really cool thing. And it's clearly shown in Pride and Prejudice. And I absolutely love that scene. I also wrote down the Jane Eyre that has Michael Fassbender in it, the newer one. I really liked that rendition of it. I loved the costumes. I loved the story of Jane Eyre. So beautiful. I loved the book. So I wanted to mention that one. And then another wonderful period film is called Far from the Madding Crowd, also based on a book, which I love. I love that book. But I need to reread it or rewatch the movie, because I was trying to remember. I remember the characters and I remember specific scenes, but I almost don't remember like the through line. But I remember when I read it the first time, I absolutely loved it. So that is one of those are like my three, probably my top three period piece films. But I will watch them all. Literally, you cannot recommend a period piece that I won't be like, oh my gosh, adding it to the list. I'm watching it today. I love them. They are great. So I just want to just read a couple of the chats here. So you guys are talking about how much you love Jane Eyre and Far from the Madding Crowd. Love those too. And going back up, Ashley said, I followed you for about a year or so because I liked how vocal you were about your views. I grew up differently from yours, but I like how positively different we can still be. Absolutely. Actually, that was one of the things we talked about on my Substack. We talked about kind of the favorite things that we like about this community. And one of the things that we talked about was just how not everyone who's part of my Substack is, straight up conservative. It's just about having a respectful conversation with other women and seeing different perspectives. And I think that that's a great thing. So I'm glad you're here is the point. Okay, so now we're going to do the next one, the next question, which is, we are used to seeing you and Jacob's intelligent, well-spoken selves on your channel, but do either of you have a bit of a goofy side as well? And this made me laugh because Jacob and I feel like we are so goofy, and we are goofy with each other all the time. So it's obviously hard to see that when you guys aren't like in our day-to-day. You're not seeing our day-to-day. You see us when we like sit down and we have a planned video. But our relationship is super silly. Like we are just super goofy, super silly. And it's something that I love about our relationship, and I love about my husband, is that he makes me laugh all the time. And we're both just goofballs. Like we're not, I guess what it is that we're not like embarrassed to be silly around one another. We're very comfortable being silly around one another. So yeah, definitely goofy, definitely silly, just maybe not so much on my channel all the time, because we like have specific things we want to talk about, and it can be difficult to show that side when we are, when we're talking about a specific topic. So someone was asking about maybe doing a day in the life, but we could. I've done vlogs on my channel before. I try not to do too much of that though. I'm not somebody who's great with the vlogging. I don't even put that much, like I do put stuff on Instagram, but I'm not like somebody who's on my phone all day in that sense. I don't like, there's a certain element of privacy that I think is important. And I think that it should be more embraced. Not just, as a public person. I think that private people are a little too open on social media sometimes. And I think that it's important to maintain a sense of privacy. So I don't like to bother Jacob and say like, "Hey, can I film you all day?" like that's it. He's not a YouTuber. He's not doing my job. So my job is I talk to you guys, and sometimes I'll do a vlog. He wouldn't be totally opposed to it, but it's just not. That's not what he signed up for. So I don't like to push that on him just because it's, I don't know. You know what I mean? So let's see. I want to pop into the comments here again. Some of you guys are saying, what books in the background would you recommend? The less political, the better. So, join our book club. That's those are the books that I've been recommending. So we recently read like The Joy of Intimacy, which was amazing. So beautiful. And we read A Christmas Carol around Christmas time. So we do read classics. We alternate between fiction and nonfiction. So right now we're reading Catch 22. And next month we're going to read some nonfiction. So that's what's going on there. Yes. Okay. So I actually answered this question on a few of my videos ago, Amy. Amy asked, will you be sharing the name of your son when he's born? No, we won't. That is we're going to keep him off the internet. Our plan is to, we're going to introduce him once when he's a newborn, because newborns really don't look like themselves yet. And you guys have been following along with our journey this entire time. So obviously we want to share that kind of ending, I don't know what you call it, climax with you guys, that like, oh, we had the baby. We want to show the baby right after he's born, but we're not going to tell the name. And then after that, we're not going to be showing his face. We might show like the back of his head, or you might see him kind of like running if we're going somewhere and I'm filming, but generally he's not going to be on my channel or anything like that. He didn't agree or consent to any of that. And I don't want that to be his whole life to be recorded on the internet before he even knows what's going on. So yes. Whew. Okay. Out of breath. That's part of being pregnant. Okay. So for those of you guys who are asking questions, thank you so much for asking questions. Feel free to sign up for my Substack newsletter so that you can submit questions for our live stream Q&As. So let's continue here. What are some things you appreciate as a wedding guest that you'd recommend to others planning their weddings? For like example, specific wedding favors or food selections, programs, signs. So it's so funny you ask that, because right when I started my YouTube channel, I was like really interested in sharing a video or a couple of videos, a series of videos about planning your wedding, because I did so much when we planned our wedding. I really did all of it. And I loved doing it. I loved planning our wedding. And it was just so much fun for me. But then we had COVID, and I was thinking to myself, well, how much of this is still relevant? Is it relevant for me to talk about planning a wedding and things you want to do and things you want to celebrate, as COVID is kind of tapering off now? I'm curious to know, would that be something you guys would want to see on my channel, is some sort of video about how to plan a wedding and things that are like fun to incorporate? But in answer to this question, I can give you a couple things. So I think that finding a cute wedding favor is always really fun. Like, it doesn't have to be something that they're going to keep forever, but just something that shows that it goes with the theme, or that you put a little bit of forethought into it, and it's just like sweet. So for us, what we did was we bought like a giant box of keys that were also bottle openers. And you can buy those on Amazon. You can get like a whole pack of 250. And so I bought a bunch of those. They were very inexpensive. And then I printed a bunch of little cards and I wrote "The Key to Love." And I tied that on. And it's cheesy, but I thought it was very cute. Stuff like that I think is really sweet. If you guys watch my baby shower video, then you'll see that the favors my friend made were also really cute. She wrote "Boys are the bomb," and it was a bath bomb. I love that kind of thing. I think it's really cute. I think it shows a lot of you're just thinking about it in a really fun way. So that was something that I really like when people do. For programs, I think programs are really helpful if you're doing a ceremony that most people aren't familiar with. So for us, we had a Jewish religious ceremony, and a lot of it wasn't in English. So we explained all the different traditions that we were doing, which I thought was really nice and helpful for the people who were not familiar with some of the practices that we do when we get married. So for example, I walk around my husband to be at the time, 7 times in the ceremony, and we explained why I do that. So that kind of thing is really nice. So those are the kinds of things that I like. But I think that planning a wedding is so much fun, and you can put so much personality into it. And it also doesn't have to be crazy expensive. There are things you can do to cut costs and cut corners a little bit here and there, and especially taking on some of the tasks yourself so that you don't have to pay someone else to do them if you can make that work. Okay, so scrolling back up. Yeah, some of you guys are saying that you would like to see a video like that. So yeah, I definitely will consider doing that. Okay. Oh my goodness. We got some really important questions. So I'm trying to see which ones. I don't think I'm going to answer everything tonight. But let's start here. Building off of opposite sex friends question. So in my last live stream Q&A, we talked about having friends of the opposite sex. I'm curious about your thoughts on long-term friends of the opposite sex. I'm talking about friends you've literally grown up with and see each other more like family than a potential partner. For me, that has been the exception because it feels weird to kind of end a friendship that is so solid and consistent. What are your thoughts? So if you guys missed it in my last live stream, I expressed that I think that opposite sex friendships are not a good idea. So I went way more in depth in that video. So you can definitely check that out after this. But here I want to talk about this specific question. If it's a long-term friend, it's a friend you've had since you were a kid. So I think there's a few things to think about. Number one is, how old are you guys? Like, what is your dynamic? How do you guys hang out? You have to be real and honest about your situation. I think if you guys have the kind of dynamic where you're going out alone all the time, like dating, I'm not going to say that you're dating, but those are dates when you go out alone with someone of the opposite sex. That even if you've been friends for a really long time, it's still easy for one person or the other to misread that situation. If it's a family friend, in the sense where you guys have known each other since you were kids, they come over and hang out with your family, you go over and hang out with their family, you guys don't hang out alone a lot, then I think that that's okay. I think that that's like, okay, maybe they're more like a cousin. But you don't ever want to put yourself in a situation, even if it's with someone you've known since you were a kid, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are constantly alone with someone who's of the opposite sex, who you guys are really getting along. Like, that's very confusing. Even if you guys have known each other since you were kids, you are not related. And if you guys have chemistry, if you guys have compatibility, theoretically, you guys could date. Like, that could happen. It's not off the table. So I think it's just important to understand the dynamic between you guys, understand how you hang out, understand your age. The reason I brought up age is because depending on what age you are, your hormones could be raging. Things could be a little bit different than if you're like a little bit older and a little bit more established. And yeah, so you just have to be real and clear and honest about the situation. Like, be clear-headed about it, and don't don't allow yourself to be casual in a sense about the way that you approach it. Just because you've known this person for a really long time doesn't necessarily mean that they feel the same way, that it could be just that it's just nothing and you guys are totally platonic. It could be, but it's not always guaranteed. So that is my answer to that question. View the situation for what it is and actually analyze it. I think that's kind of the best way. Okay. This one, I'm sure, is going to be controversial, but we're going to answer it. Thoughts on breastfeeding in public. So, I am someone who does not believe that women should be openly breastfeeding in public. If you have a cover or something, of course, breastfeed in public, like in the sense of if your baby's hungry, you're allowed to feed your baby if you have a cover on because you're not showing anything. But my perspective is that it is important and good to sexualize the body parts of, women and men that are sexual. It's a good thing. It means that when you are alone with your spouse, he still finds you hot and sexy because those things that you keep private just for him are sexual. That's a great thing. Breasts are sexual. They are. Now, that's not to say in the situation where you are breastfeeding a baby, it is a sexual organ. That is not what I mean. But to a stranger, to see a woman's breast revealed in that way, it's not appropriate in my opinion. So I think it's best to cover up and breastfeed your baby. I know that's not a popular opinion nowadays, but I'm somebody who believes, like I said, that the desexualizing of everything so that anything can be revealed and why are you sexualizing that is not good for anyone's sex life and not good for society in general. So breastfeeding when you are covered up, absolutely wonderful. Do your thing, girl. But breastfeeding and kind of showing everything and expecting everyone else to just be like, whatever, like I just don't think it's realistic. And I don't think that it's the best policy. Okay. So now we are going to do this question. Whew. This is the question that I titled the video tonight. So let's get into it. I think I'm going to summarize it a little bit. So this person said, I was raised liberal and never got taught conservative values at all. So I slept with guys I liked, which sometimes turned into basically one night stands as they didn't like me back, which was heartbreaking. It felt like I was being punished for wanting a relationship. If I was trying to sleep around, I wouldn't be so upset. And I felt this push from society to not care and to not show sadness for wanting for a special someone. I want to start dating again. And I recently decided to refrain from sex until I'm married. So I heard you say that we should marry people who have the same values as we do. And I agree. I'm not religious. So the types of guys I want to date won't have this wait until marriage to have sex mentality. I don't have any conservative friends to talk to about my concerns, which is why I wanted to ask this question. A lot of my friends have told me that or asked me the following: I'll only end up with a religious person who has the same mentality, or I'll lose a lot of good men because they won't want to wait. So my question is, when dating, should I mention to the guy that I'm waiting until marriage? If so, when and how? Okay, so this is a really good question, and I appreciate you asking. I think that's really commendable that you are taking control of your choices and your sex life. I think that, having sex before marriage, you're right, it will hurt you, and clearly you've had that experience and you're not getting what you want out of your relationships because of it. And I think that's a really awesome first step for you in saying, I know what I want, and I know that I want to, only ask this. I want to ask this from men. I want the men I date to agree to my terms. I think that's fantastic. So often women are kind of convinced to to have sex before they want to, or before, or just generally outside of marriage because they're told that they should. And is that what they really want? I don't think so. I don't think so. So let's go through the couple of concerns that your friends have. So the first one is, I'll only end up with a religious person who has the same mentality. I don't think that that's true. So this is, I'm coming from, I have like a mixed perspective here. I want to talk to you as somebody who is not conservative. I want to talk to you as somebody who doesn't really, align with those values. And also from my perspective, which is conservative. So let's kind of take the first side of things. As somebody who's liberal, I don't think that you can only end up with a guy who's religious and is waiting till marriage because he's religious. There are men out there, there are a number of men out there who would only want to have sex in a long-term relationship. So how different is it for them to kind of flip that switch and say, okay, well, a long-term relationship or marriage? If you're going to go with a guy who aligns with your values, and this is your value now, that is the important thing to remember, is that this is part of your value system now, that you are waiting until marriage. Then the guy that you end up with is going to share that value of, okay, well, maybe he wasn't initially anticipating waiting until marriage. Maybe originally he was anticipating waiting for a long-term relationship. But if he is presented with this girl who's amazing, then he can flip that switch and say, okay, well, maybe I can wait until marriage instead of waiting for a long-term relationship. If that makes sense, I think that's definitely possible. Now, from my conservative perspective, I think that there are generally more men who are religious who want to wait until marriage. I think that waiting until marriage is something that stems from traditional religious values. And it's a great value to have. So even if you're not religious, I'm very happy for you that you've taken that step. But as a religious person, I think it tends to be easier because we tend to agree on that as a value. But I think you can and will meet somebody who will respect that. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, I'll lose a lot of good men because they won't want to wait. Well, that is not true. In the sense that if you want a guy to wait until marriage, then the guy who you want to wait until marriage, he is the one for you. So you're going to be whittling down your options. Yeah. But is that a bad thing? No. That's kind of what you want. You don't want to have a plethora of men who you can't end up with and who you don't want to be with and who you end up hurting yourself with. You want to be with that guy who respects your values and shares your values. And that includes for you waiting until marriage. That's fantastic. So, you might lose the men who are good, according to your friends who don't care if they have sex before marriage, but to you, they're not good. They're not good for you, and they don't respect your boundaries. So that's a good thing. It's good for you to start whittling down your options to the people who you should actually be with. So that is my second thing. And then the question you asked was, when dating, should I mention to the guy that I'm waiting until marriage? Absolutely. So funny story. I actually brought your question to a few of my husband's friends. And I said, okay, guys, I have this question that I got from a follower. I want to make sure I give her a really accurate and good response. And so I asked their opinion, and all of them said, absolutely. We would love, you should definitely tell the guy that you were waiting till marriage. They were all very positive. First of all, they were all like, that's a really wonderful thing. But second of all, they all said, yeah, you should have that conversation early. And I agree. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had early. Now, it doesn't have to be had immediately, but I think it definitely should be had early. And because you don't want it to become something you're hiding, and you don't want it to become something that gets sprung spur of the moment when you're already in a situation that is physical and you're like, oh, just so you know, I'm waiting. That would be very complicated. I think you want to be in a situation where the person that you are dating knows where you're coming from, but maybe you've already established a little bit of a rapport. Now, that doesn't mean super long along the line. I talk about how you can establish rapport on a first date and have this conversation on a second date. And the reason I'm saying all this from this perspective is because you aren't religious. So if you are more liberal, I think this conversation doesn't need to be had on a first date. I think it can be had on a second date. If you're religious, then this is going to be like a non-negotiable part of not only I'm not having sex until marriage, but it's part of your religious commitment. And that means that your religion is something you need to talk about very immediately. But for you, this is kind of separate from your other values. And so you can have this conversation like the second date, a little bit later. So I think that the way you bring this up is you want obviously to be a little bit more organic, but I think it's also a conversation you can have just with openness. If it's a good guy, he'll be able to have a conversation with you where you guys are talking about serious stuff. And you can say, this is something that I came to that I didn't used to do. And now I've learned something about myself and about the way I want to approach it that is going to, I think, make my life better. And I think that that's a really good way to talk about it. If you're in a mature relationship and from your age, I would say you're trying to enter a mature relationship, you should be able to have these conversations. So that is definitely what I think. And I hope it helps. I hope it gives you some perspective, and that moving forward, your dating life is as successful as I hope it should be. Okay, so one more question because I've been talking for a while. Okay. So let's do this one. My boyfriend and I have been dating for over a year now and plan on getting married in the near future. We have a great relationship and he is a wonderful man, but I have really struggled with his family. His family will often make jokes at his expense, excusing it as just giving him a hard time, and will even blatantly insult him in front of me. So she gives a couple of examples. And she says, I try to refrain from commenting and just respond as politely as possible, but I can't help but feel like I should stand up for him. Neither of us know how to react, so we usually just sit quietly and try to let the rude comments go. What is the classic way to respond in these situations? Is sitting quietly and letting it go the proper thing to do? Or is there a classy way to respond in defense of ourselves without being unnecessarily harsh or vengeful? How do you deal with criticism? I am just so stuck on how to approach this because I know they'll be my in-laws someday. So I really need to develop the right mindset to deal with it properly. I can imagine that that's really hard. And I'd love to get people's thoughts in the chat too on this situation, because that's a hard situation where people are teasing and being mean and kind of covering it up as if it's not being mean, as if they're not saying something that's hurtful. So, excuse me. I think that I thought about that a little bit. And you don't want to kind of get in people's face about this kind of thing. A lot of the time it's like habit. Families can like have a habit of like teasing someone or putting someone down, and they think it's normal. And then someone else comes into the family and is like, I don't think this is normal and I don't really like it. So you have to be delicate. Absolutely. You have to be delicate about how you want to approach this situation. So what I thought about is that I would do stuff where it's very subtle and it doesn't really like admonish anyone. It just sort of sets the tone for what you want to do when you are around your family. Your family to be, your in-laws. So, for example, if your mother-in-law is like teasing him behind your fiance to be, we're just going to call him your fiance for now, your fiance behind his back to you, you can kind of like laugh a little and then subtly defend him by saying things like, oh no, I don't think that's true. Or like, oh, I love that about him. The kind of thing where the person doesn't feel like you are immediately like, no, stop that. He's a good guy. Instead, you're just kind of like subtly showing, no, I don't actually agree with that, you know? And it's just a nice way to defend your husband without it being a conflict. So if you're, if you're in that situation where people are teasing him, everyone's teasing him, and you're just kind of like, no, that's silly. Oh my gosh, you guys are too much. Like he's the best. He's so great. That kind of thing. It just subtly reminds everyone you don't agree with this. Um, and I think it just sort of allows everyone else to, oh, like maybe we shouldn't talk like this. Maybe it's not so nice. I also think when no one is speaking about him, like when you guys are just hanging out, if you're just hanging out with your sister-in-law or your mother-in-law, um, talk about the wonderful things that he's been doing lately. Just share how much you love him and how much he's been doing, and just talk really positively about him. And as you do that, people may begin to be less judgmental. It's not your role as a wife to get in the middle of his family dynamic, but it is your role as a wife to constantly be boosting him and showing how much you respect him and showing how much you love him to his family, so that maybe over time they start to realize this isn't the most appropriate thing. Because being this super confrontational with your in-laws, it really doesn't, it feels like it's the right thing to do, but it often is not. So it's much better to just be smart about it, be wise about it, be subtle, be kind about your husband, constantly be like talking him up. And I think you might begin to see a bit of a change in his family's response. They'll start to realize, oh, I don't really want to talk about that. They may even realize that they're uncomfortable talking like that around you. So they might just be like, oh, I don't really want to talk like this around her, because if we do talk about it like this, then she's going to say something like, oh no, I love that about it. She'll immediately respond in a positive way. And so it's just less fun in a good way. It's less fun for them to tease because you're not teasing with them. So that is my thoughts on that. I hope it helps. But that is it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed my live stream tonight. This was really fun. We went through some really good questions, and you guys were awesome in the comments. I loved seeing what you guys had to say. Make sure to subscribe to my Substack newsletter. I would love if you guys did. Head over to classicallyabby.substack.com, where you can subscribe and submit questions for the next live stream, or you can be getting all of the other exclusive content that I do over there. But that is it for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.